This is Mad Movie Mark, or Mad Movie Mark movie review. Thank you for joining me as I review the 1984 made-for-TV nuclear war movie Threads. Hey, there's no reason to be all panicky. I am just reviewing every movie that has 100% fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes. I'm giving them all a score of 1 to 10. After I watch them and score them all, I will rank them from worst to best. I've been reviewing these movies chronologically from 1920 to now 1984. This movie has a 100% fresh rating from the critics and a 92% fresh rating from the audience. It is a British-Australian made-for-TV movie that was jointly produced by the BBC. Now, before I watch this movie, I will review another movie in about 4 weeks that's called Grave of the Fireflies. Now, I've seen that movie before, and I thought that movie was the bleakest, most saddest movie I've ever seen in my life. But this might take over. This might take over that movie for the most saddest, bleakest movie that I've ever seen. Now, this is a made-for-TV movie, so some of you out there might argue that this is not a real movie, but it is on the 100% fresh list that I have, so I consider it a movie. It takes place in Sheffield, Northern England. It is about a conflict between the U.S. and the Soviet Union. And it basically tells what would happen if a nuclear war ever broke out and a nuclear bomb was dropped onto Sheffield, Northern England, how that would affect the people, how it would affect the crops, the animals, just civilization as a whole, and basically how many people would suffer, how many people would die, how they would die, what complications they would suffer from. Now, I've seen a lot of disaster movies in my life. I'm not a huge disaster movie fan. I don't search out disaster movies to try to find them. Just because it's not really always my cup of tea. But I've never seen a movie, usually these disaster / post-apocalyptic movies, if they're about nuclear war, they're about what happens after the nuke has already been dropped and now we have civilization. I've never seen a movie that goes step by step what would actually happen, what they believe would happen during a nuclear bomb being dropped and the devastation that would take place after that. Now, how do you make that into a movie? Someone would say, where's the story? Where's the plot? Where's the characters? Well, this movie, when it first starts off, it's about a couple named Ruth and Jimmy. Now, this couple, they are a young couple, two kids, young in love, and pretty early on in the movie, we learn that Ruth is pregnant. Now, for me, this starts the actual devastation of what the movie's going to be, because you know that a nuclear bomb is going to hit. This is what the movie's about. If you know anything about the movie, if you've done any research, you know that this is about a nuclear bomb that's going to hit, and they just hit you right away with this woman's pregnant. So clearly they're trying to give you a character who you care about. You have a reason to care about her. Otherwise, she probably would just get mixed up and lost in the shuffle of people in this movie who are in agonizing pain or who are dying. So they have to give you a reason to focus on her and a reason to, really care about her. And the reason is because she's pregnant. Now, they decide that they are going to keep the baby. This is also probably the first movie that I've ever heard the term abortion used. I was trying to think about this earlier. Have I ever heard a movie on this list that I've watched 1984 and sooner? I'm not talking about movies present day, but I'm talking 1984 and before, where I've heard the term abortion, and I don't think I have. I'm trying to think of it, but I can't think of another movie where they use the word abortion. So the dad of Jimmy's dad says, "Are you sure you don't want to get an abortion? Because we are going into a recession, or we are in a recession, and it's not a great time to have a child." But he decides that he is going to keep the child and that him and Ruth are going to get married. Now, in the background of these scenes, you hear news broadcasts of tensions between Russia and the Soviet Union. Apparently, the America had some kind of coup that they launched in Iran, and this affected the Soviets. This angered the Soviets, and a war is brewing between the countries. And you kind of see, you kind of hear this in the background. Now, I had a hard time. I don't follow a lot of this type of stuff very easily when it comes to like countries, coups, wars, things like that. And it's in the background, so a lot of the people aren't paying attention, or it's not on their radar, or it's just kind of filler background news that's going on, just to kind of tell a story real quick. When I think it was early 2019, I believe, I was at a a bridal shower. It was supposed to be just for women, but the husband decided to crash, and he invited me, and we went to this bridal shower. Now, him and his family are extraordinarily rich, at least in my mind, in my view of life. They are extraordinarily rich. So it was me, I think two other guys, my fiance at the time, who's now my wife, and like six or seven, maybe eight women. And we were in this Hummer limo, I think it was, and we were in LA, and we were bar hopping. And I don't drink, so I'm like the only one who's, even though I mean, I don't drink at all, even though I'm not driving. No one's driving because we're in a limo. I still don't drink. So I'm like just like pounding Coke Zeros as we're in this bar, and this news comes on the news station, and I'm the only one listening to it. I'm the only one watching the news in a bar full of people on like a Saturday night that's like hopping. And on the news, this person, this random newscaster says that five people came down mysteriously ill in China with a illness that is somewhat like a coronavirus, and it's starting to be on the radar of doctors. And I thought this was huge news. Like I'll never forget this moment in my life, considering how big COVID is and how it broke out. I thought this was huge news, but no one in the bar cared. They were just having fun. And I even showed my wife, my fiance. I said, "Look at the news. Look what's on the news. This is huge. This is a big story." And she didn't care. She was drinking. She's like, "Woo, yeah, woohoo!" She didn't care. And that kind of like reminded me of the beginning of this movie, where people are just living their lives. They're going through the motions. They don't think that anything big is going to happen. They don't think that catastrophe is going to fall upon them. They're just moving on with their lives.
Too displayed in
Worldwide anxiety about the superpower confrontation in the Middle East has increased still further this evening. In a statement issued a short time ago by the Pentagon in Washington, the United States has accused the Soviet Union of...
And then there comes a day when it's announced that the U.S. and Russia are going to war.
They started fighting, Mum. Who has? The Americans and the Russians. It's just been on the news. My dad says you've got to come home now. Come on.
Hey, you haven't paid for them things!
Now the big wigs, or the important brass of Sheffield, Northern England, they decide they're going to meet, like the head of I don't know what to call them. They're just like the important bureaucrats of this town in Sheffield, Northern England. They are going to meet. They're going to meet in an underground bunker type of thing, and they're going to figure out how to, divvy up food and ration things, and life can move on after this. If a nuclear war is to break out.
Port 3. Hang on, there's something on the airport, I think.
I think it's because it's the Soviet Union. It's just everyone in this movie thinks that a nuclear war is going to break out. Now, besides the fact everyone telling me that nuclear war was going to break out, I don't know why they just assumed this would happen. I don't know why they prepared for this. There was no story that I heard that, I mean, there were a lot of people protesting the bomb. There's a lot of people, afraid that a nuclear disaster is going to happen. But I don't know why why there was so much belief in this. I mean, even today you have like North Korea and you have Russia, who have two countries who have kind of insane leaders, kind of like kooky, could hit that button any minute type of leader. We're not that concerned about a nuclear war. Maybe it's because we have better technology today. I don't know, but when Russia invaded Ukraine, I was not worried that nuclear war would break out. And if we were to at some point get involved, if China, say, were to try to take over Taiwan, I still would not think that a nuclear war would break out, just because a war involving a country with a nuke happens. I don't automatically think that a nuclear war will break out. But for some reason, they thought it would, and they were right. A nuclear warhead is used. I believe it's dropped on Sheffield, and we see the destruction immediately that happens. Basically, this is going to be a spoiler, but you should know what happens. So Jimmy, who is the boyfriend, he passes. He dies. The parents of of Ruth and Jimmy. Now the parents of, I think, Jimmy lived for a while. I don't remember if Ruth's parents lived for a while. But eventually the fallout from the dust that is falling from the nuclear explosion, it blankets the entire country. I think it says like something like 7 million people die or something in the first few weeks of this nuclear disaster. And a few weeks after, a lot of the people who are alive will die because of ingesting the fallout, that the dust that's falling down.
The first fallout dust settles on Sheffield. It's an hour and 25 minutes after the attack. An explosion on the ground at Crewe has sucked up this debris and made it radioactive. The wind has blown it here. This level of attack has broken most of the windows in Britain. Many roofs are open to the sky. Some of the lethal dust gets in.
And more people will die because there's no food. There's no way to get food to people. There's the hospitals and doctors. They don't have any access to medication. The roads are all going to be destroyed. There's no easy way for survivors to continue to survive. It's almost like it's luck, to be perfectly. That's kind of what I gathered. A lot of the people who are still alive are they lucky? I don't know, because they're leading very miserable and painful lives. A lot of them have scars and burns, and they're just not in a very good condition. Sort of towards the later half of the movie, we see guards who are deployed by the military, who are they have the rations of food fenced in, and people are trying to get to the rations. They're trying to get to the food, and these armed guards are stopping them and telling them that they can't get to the food.
I repeat, go home. There is nothing we can do. We have no authority to distribute food. Who are you saving it for? This is a warning. Any attempt to appropriate provisions from these premises will be met by force.
There's armed guards everywhere in this movie who are killing people for looting, killing people for stealing. Well, looting, stealing, same thing, whatever. But it's kind of like a everyone for themselves mentality, where people are just trying to live. Now, Ruth is still alive, and she's still pregnant throughout most of this movie. And we see at one point she runs into a guy that she knows, and they like kind of eat the dead carcass of a lamb. And she eventually has her child, and we kind of flash forward later in life where her child is growing up. I think it said something like 13 years later. The children seem like zombies, where they don't. It says that the kids who are women who are pregnant, their pregnancies can lead to like deformities and can lead to all sorts of problems because of the nuclear bomb that was dropped. These kids definitely feel like they're like slower, like they don't comprehend a lot of things, almost like they just kind of stare off into space. Except for Ruth's child, she seems like she's pretty with it. She seems like she knows what she's doing. Somehow later in the movie, Ruth's child becomes pregnant. Ruth passes away. At the end of the movie, Ruth has her child, and I believe it's a stillborn. I believe the child's not alive, and then that's the end of the movie. And I'm like, wow, what a downer of an ending. What a horrible way to end this movie. Like, if there's no hope, this movie has no hope really ever in it. Because when she becomes pregnant, you realize that it's going to be very bad. And then when she goes to give birth, and before she gives birth, they start talking about how it could affect a child, how bad it could be for a child. You realize, wow, this is also going to end up being very bad. They kind of prepare you. They prepare you for the sadness. They set you up for the sadness. They set you up for the utter devastation that you're going to feel. And you really feel no hope for anything good to happen in this movie ever. It's just a bleak, very sad movie. If I'm going to be perfectly honest with you, at the end of the movie where Ruth has, I could have done, when Ruth has her child, and we learned about like what a child can go through and how it can affect the child, I would have been absolutely fine with the movie ending there. I thought when they had Ruth's child grow up and they eventually had her become pregnant, I mean, sure, it shows the cycle of the generations trying to make it through generation, trying to repopulate the world, and how hard repopulating the world can be under these circumstances. They talk about how you have to be really careful with the crop industry. They talk about how generations. It's really hard to build upon society and to build upon the world after something like this happens. And I feel like they really hammer that into your brain throughout the entire movie with the text across the screen and with just what they're showing you, to where like I didn't really need to see Ruth's child grow up. I thought honestly it was a lot of filler. At the end of the movie, it was just so sad and depressing that like a movie doesn't have to be happy at the end of the movie, but I feel like there should be some sense of satisfaction at the end of a movie, like some sense of, okay, like that's how that should have ended. Okay, like I understand what they did there, but I don't know. I just didn't. I wasn't feeling it at all. It didn't work for me in any way. Aside from that, though. The acting in this movie is pretty good. I will say that, I mean, this isn't a movie that relies on acting. It's more of a movie that relies on what's going on in these people's lives and not how they're acting. Oh yeah, and that like bureaucracy, those people who were part of the upper echelon of the city who were down in the bomb shelter, they end up dying also. And I think that is also to fallout and also to the fact that they couldn't get any food or water or anything to these people, and they couldn't leave because they were like, there's a building on top of them that like was caving in or something. There's some reason why they couldn't leave. They couldn't get any people in there to save them, so they also passed away, which goes to show you kind of like this can affect everyone. It doesn't matter like what your lot in society is. It doesn't matter like what your place in society is. It's really hard to prepare for something like this with that kind of time frame, and you're basically in the same boat that everyone else is in. And actually, the people who survived were able to survive because they were out there in the trenches fighting for food, actually like trying to survive. They weren't huddled inside of a bomb shelter. And those guys were supposed to be trying to figure out how to help society move on, and they absolutely were. They did nothing. They provided no support. They provided nothing to the building upon society after this happened. So I think it says a lot about class, and how it doesn't really matter where you are in the class system. I usually love very bleak, very sad movies. But this, I don't know, this one maybe was a little too bleak. I like to, at least at some point in the movie, feel like there's going to be some reason to feel hopeful. There's going to be some reason to say, okay, like maybe things aren't going to be as bad as they are. But no, things were actually terrible. And of course, this is what would happen during a nuclear bomb if it drops. So, I mean, there's no reason to be hopeful. There's no reason to have any type of desire of things being good. You know, it's just things are going to be bad. Things are going to be terrible. Maybe society will live. Maybe it won't. It's a good chance that society won't carry on, and that the only thing that's going to be alive are cockroaches. That's basically what I got at the end of this movie. So all in all, this movie does really hit hard. It really does hit home. I can see how in the 1980s this would be very impactful, and this would just scare the living daylights out of everyone who saw this movie. Especially if you think that there's a good chance that some crazy Putin or Kim Jong Un or whatever is going to hit the button and cause a nuclear war. I could see how this would be absolutely devastating and terrifying for the people of the 1980s. That being said, for me, the cinematography is a little dated in the movie. I could have done without the last part with Ruth's daughter. But all in all, it's a good movie. Even for a made-for-TV movie, it's really, I would say for a made-for-TV movie, it's pretty well done. I would say it's very well thought through. This isn't like your Hallmark made-for-TV movie type things. I give this an 8.5 out of 10. I hope you join me for my next review. It sounds like my next review sounds like a movie that everyone wants. The title sounds like something that everyone's looking for, and that's A Room with a View. Now, I've never seen it. I see it stars Helen Bonham Carter, so I am intrigued by that. Let's hope that it's a great movie. Thank you. I hope you have a great day.